Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Inside Immigration. Today, we're joined by partner Ravi, Jain, and associate Neerja, Saini. Please feel free to ask any questions through the pop-up text bar on your screen, and we'll do our best to get to your questions at the end. If the panelists do not get to your question, you can contact them through the information provided on screen. And with that being said, I'm going to hand things over to the panelists.
Thank you, Stephen. So just to get right into it, so with respect to COVID-19 related updates in the month of March, we have seen the order in council, that is the law that sets out the travel ban for those coming in from the US, was recently updated on March 19. This is in effect until April 21. These orders in council typically run for about a month, and the government is likely going to keep extending it on a monthly basis and gradually ease restrictions, given this is a very fluid situation. There hasn't been any major change to this order in council since the extended family member exception and the compassionate grounds exemption was introduced in October of last year. So very briefly, if you're coming in from the US, you may not enter unless you are asymptomatic, you have a negative test result, and you convince a border officer that your purpose of entry is non-optional and non-discretionary. So some people, such as immediate family members of Canadian PR citizens, are exempt from the requirement to show a non-optional and non-discretionary purpose if they are coming in to stay for at least 15 days. Same goes for extended family members of a Canadian PR or citizen. Also exempt are those seeking to enter for compassionate reasons, such as attending a funeral or providing support to a critically ill person in Canada. But extended family members and those seeking to enter on compassionate grounds have to provide some additional documents. That is a prior written authorization by the IRCC allowing entry, and a statutory declaration attesting to their relationship to the Canadian PR or Canadian citizen. The travel ban relating to those entering from a country other than the US was last updated in February and will also expire on April 21. Not many changes to that one either. So in the month of March, we've also seen some public policies being extended in the wake of COVID-19. So on March 29, the government announced that it will be extending a public policy allowing visitors to apply for a work permit inside Canada to August 31, 2021. So generally, before this public policy was introduced, visitors inside Canada could apply for a work permit inside Canada, but they would have to leave Canada and re-enter before a work permit was issued to them. And so because of this, many applicants chose to flagpole, which basically means just crossing the US-Canada border, only to immediately turn around and seek entry with a work permit. Of course, due to COVID-19, this is no longer possible. So the visitors that were already inside Canada were faced with a dilemma. So it wasn't safe for them to travel back and return because of the pandemic. At the same time, it was uncertain if they could even return under the travel ban. Or, they had to remain in Canada without any legal right to work. So at the same time, there were employers who were continuing to face challenges recruiting and hiring workers they needed during the pandemic. So the government introduced this public policy to benefit both employers and visitors who may have the skills to contribute to the labor shortages. But this time they also slightly modified the policy to allow any visitor who has a valid job offer to apply for an employer-specific work permit, regardless of the date they initially entered Canada. Previously, when this policy was introduced in August 2020, a visitor must have been in Canada on August 24, 2020, and remained in Canada to apply for this work permit. So those who arrived as visitors after August 24, 2020, perhaps under the family member exception, were not eligible to apply for a work permit inside Canada. But now the government is allowing all visitors inside Canada to benefit from this policy, regardless of the date that they entered. There's well, I guess Ravi can talk about the
yeah. So the next program is the restoration program. So Normally, if you fall out of status, so if your visitor status or work permit status or student status expires, and you have not applied prior to the expiry to extend it, then you're out of status, right? And so normally you have 90 days to restore your status. Restoration means to get it back. And otherwise, you have to leave Canada and apply from abroad or go to the border. So what the government did is they basically got rid of the 90-day rule due to COVID, because a lot of people were stuck here and they just didn't think it was fair for the 90 days to apply. So you have now, if you're in Canada in status on or after January 30th, 2020, but your status expired on or before May 31st, 2021, so it's coming up, then you have until August 31st to restore. So it's been extended, which is very nice, recognizing that, of course, the pandemic is continuing and you know, the variants are becoming more of an issue. The second program I want to talk about is the Postgraduate Work Permit Extension Program. So given COVID's effect on the labor market and the difficulty that students who graduated who have this postgraduate open work permit have had getting jobs, they may have seen their hours reduced, they may have lost employment. The government wanted to do something about it. So what they've done is they basically said you can get up to 18 months in addition, so to what you've had. So basically, to be eligible, you have to have a postgraduate work permit that expired on or after January 30th, 2020. There's that date again, or will expire within 4 months from the date that you apply. You have to have been in Canada as of January 27, 2021, when this policy took effect, and stayed in Canada since then. And you must have temporary resident status, or you must have been applying to restore it, or you must have already applied to restore it. And there's some other requirements that we can help you with and advise you on to get you that extra 18 months, which is a wonderful thing to have. I mean, already, you know, if you studied for 1 year, you get 1 year. If you study for 2 years, you get 3 years. Well, theoretically, you could get 3 years and then another 18 months. So it's a great policy, and it's something that we've been talking to the government about in terms of, you know, some measures to implement to relieve some of the difficulties that foreign nationals are facing. So I'll pass it over to Neerja now. She'll talk about the IEC program, the PNP program, and some processing time.
Right, thank you. So the IEC program is basically a youth mobility program that allows young people between the ages of 18 and 35 from certain countries to have the opportunity to travel, work, and live in Canada. So there are very limited work permits available under this program each year, and every country has a quota. This program had been closed since April of last year because of the pandemic, but as of March 1, 2021, the program has officially and partially opened up for new applications. And due to the pandemic, the application process has been slightly revised. So now everyone needs to provide proof of a job offer before an invitation to apply for a work permit is issued to them. As for the Ontario PNP, on March 15, Ontario announced that they are changing the registration system of 5 of its economic class immigration streams. These changes apply to the foreign worker, international student, in-demand skills, master, graduate, and PhD graduate stream. So instead of a first-come, first-served basis, the OINP will now use a points-based system to rank candidates by certain factors. So what's been happening till now is that Ontario would announce that they are reopening or they're opening their web portal to accept registrations under a particular stream, and everyone would rush in until all the spots were taken. And since these streams are so popular, this registration window would only last for a few minutes before they would become full. So many people complained that the system was unfair to those that were not tech savvy, don't have access to high quality computer systems or don't have the fastest internet connection. So now with the point system, Ontario will be able to prioritize candidates with certain skills, demographic characteristics that meet the regional labor market needs. So some of the factors that may be considered by Ontario will be the level of education, field of study, proficiency in English or French, intention to reside outside of the GTA, skills and work experience level, and of course the labor market needs. So full details about the point system and how the points will be allocated and how and when the invitation rounds will take place have not yet been announced, but they are expected to be released very soon. So for the processing times, of course, COVID-19 has created a lot of challenges in processing applications, because some applications are paper-based only, and because of health concerns, some offices have had to be closed or operated on limited capacity to ensure the health and safety of the employees. There are also competing priorities. For example, the government is trying to prioritize applications for those that are exempt under the travel ban or are already in Canada and meet all the requirements. Another factor that's contributing to delays is that the applicants are not able to submit a complete application, either not able to provide police certificates, medicals, notarized documents, or biometrics due to the, pandemic situation in their respective countries. But we are starting to see some movement. For example, for our CEC applicants, it's taking about 8 to 9 months from the submission of their electronic PR application to the approval. So in February and March, we've seen quite a few CEC applications we submitted in May to July of last year that were approved, and some of them have received landing emails. Inside work permit and extensions are taking anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Bridging open work permits are being issued significantly faster, sometimes within a month. We are seeing some delays in obtaining visitor record extensions. Sometimes it takes 6 to 8 months. For inland spousals, we are seeing sponsor approvals within 6 to 12 months, but for outland, the process has been significantly delayed. However, recognizing that family reunification is an important priority for Canada, and because many families have been separated for more time than is ideal because of the pandemic, the government did add more resources to these type of applications to expedite processing. And I believe Ravi can elaborate on that.
Yeah, so basically with spousals in particular, what's happening is that they're digitizing the application. So there's been a real move to, especially with respect to what's going on with the pandemic, with officers not going into the office so much. They've hired a company. So I know this because I participated in some calls with the senior civil servants in Ottawa. I was past chair of the Canadian Bar Association national section. So I continue to sort of get intel on this, and we share it with the lawyers across the country. And so the last, we've been talking about it for quite some time actually, how we want applications to be online as much as possible. And I'll speak about that in a minute. But in terms of spousals, they've been digitizing because they're paper-based only right now. So you have to, our staff has to go into the office, and we have to, prepare the applications, and then we have to send them by paper. And then, of course, to get the files processed, they're digitizing them. So they've hired this outside company to digitize them. That then allows them to send the files in the digital format when they have capacity in what they call their network. In other words, the different offices around the country or even around the world. So we've noticed that, and we've talked about how some applications are getting processed ahead of other ones. So normally it's first in, first out. But what we're seeing is last in, first out a little bit. And I think that's just because based on compatibility and accessibility, some are just getting processed ahead of others, and they're aware of that. They've gone from 27 to 48 processing officers for outside of Canada cases, and from 24 to 26 officers for in Canada cases. That was from around December 2020 to this month. So that should help with some of the processing times. They're doing interviews by MS Teams, they're using that, so that's interesting. But in terms of current processing times, as of last month, I would say they're about 16 months in Canada overall. I think Neerja was talking about the initial sponsorship approval, but overall, in terms of final visa issuance or final permanent residence landing, 16 months in Canada and 19 months outside. Now, I talked about digital. You know, digitizing, you may think to yourselves, you know, why can't the government just do this and snap its fingers? Well, there's a lot of upfront IT work that needs to take place. The GCMS system, the global case management system that they use right now, is quite old, and it requires a disaster recovery plan to be in place for it. It has significant ongoing IT maintenance costs. So they also, as they transition from the GCMS system to a new system, they have to make sure it doesn't negatively impact like these spousal sponsorship, the paper-based applications I talked about. They don't want to compromise data also in the GCMS system. They also have to maintain both large-scale paper and digital processes at the same time. So, you know, even if they move fully to digital, they still have to maintain, you know, access to people who just can't use a computer, and there's some of those equity groups that they have to pay attention to. And it's a culture change, right? Both for IRCC, for immigration, and for clients, our clients, and the rest. Now, the benefits are, again, they can shift workloads around, that can improve efficiency, reduce processing times. That's doubly true in a pandemic when you just can't get to the office. Well, if it's all digital, it doesn't really matter. They can just, you know, send files around. It reduces data entry costs for them, enhances data accuracy, because clients are inputting and we're inputting things directly, as opposed to immigration then having to hire data entry people. There's also reduction of costs and storage and shipping, and it does make it more difficult to submit an incomplete application if it's digital, because you can't go to the next field until you've completed the last one. That results in less rejection rates and unproductive back and forth. So also, by the way, it allows them to process undertake certain steps in tandem with each other, and that reduces overall processing times. So, and then they talked about, you know, they shared with me, this is all information that they've shared with me personally, it's not public, but you know, all the stuff I just talked about is sort of what the benefits are in terms of moving digital, and other benefits they can integrate to other government departments like the border agency, like the Department of Labor, ESDC. They didn't mention this, but also the Canada Revenue Agency, which they may start to look at. So going forward, they're gonna continue digitizing across different business lines, as they refer to them. They're gonna use the cloud, continue to use the cloud, for example, for parents and grandparents. There was a question about that. They're using the cloud for that system, and for the PR confirmation portal, you know, when permanent residence is finally issued. In terms of levels planning, I just want to say that, you know, the minister and I have chatted on this, you know, with some other colleagues of mine with the Bar Association, and I think he understands that we have an aging population, low birth rate, and that all labor force growth comes from immigrants, and that we're not in a great situation with the pandemic and the lack of numbers of people coming in. They are a kind of economic stimulus that will help us get out of the recession that's been caused by the pandemic, and we need to have them for that. And I mentioned to him that in the last recession, they maintained immigration levels, so I think he's well aware of that. He confirmed, and I think this is widely known now, that he wants to meet his targets of 401,000 immigrants this year, 411,000 next year, and 421,000 the year after that. So we were on a TV show together, and he talked about that. We've also had a call recently where he's mentioned that he's keen to meet this target. Of course, the previous target was around 351,000 and 361,000. So he's upped the targets significantly. You know, he was looking to see how he could meet those numbers, and we talked, and I went back to all the members of the Canadian Bar Association listserv, asked them for ideas. I then summarized them, picked some of the best ones, we ordered them, and at the top was the idea of reducing the express entry points threshold, and he actually took that suggestion. and dropped it all the way down from the mid 400s to 75, which is a dramatic drop. We haven't seen something so dramatic since the 90s when there was amnesty for refugee claimants. So this was the most bold thing he's done. I don't anticipate they're going to do it again, but you never know. You know, it's something that I thanked him for adopting our idea. I mean, I might have modified what he did a little bit, but and it was kind of nice because he liked my tweet thanking him. So that was kind of that was the coolest like I've got this year. And it was nice to see. It's nice to see him looking for ideas from various stakeholders and taking our idea very seriously. Because frankly, there are, you know, people who are here. I mean, again, I don't know if I dropped it, I would have dropped it that much, but I think what it recognized basically is what it did was if you had a pulse and you're in Canada and had a year work experience, you got an invitation pretty much. You know, was that fair to some of the very talented people overseas? I mean, you know, reality is he just shows his commitment that if you're here, you're working, you know, you're the kind of person we want to stay in Canada. In terms of you know, meeting the target going forward, I think that, you know, he's going to have to expedite spousal sponsorships. Like he did allocate, he deployed 66% more staff. You know, he committed to 6,000 cases a month finalized. That's about 18,000 cases between October and December. He actually got to 15,999 finalized. So that's not bad. I think he's going to, so he met about 93% of his goal. I think that's great. I think he needs to continue to look at deploying more staff for that category, process provincial nominee program applicants faster. And I think he's going to have to bring in people from overseas. I think that, you know, with you know, the pandemic, you know, getting more and more under control, we've seen lots of announcements of a lot of vaccines coming into this country. I think that we're going to have to look overseas, and we're going to have to start bringing in people who have those kinds of skills. We already are bringing in some work permit holders and people with essential skills, et cetera, but we really need to bring in some more. So turning to the questions, let's see, when can we expect Outland Express entry applicants? Well, this is what I was just talking about. They have been waiting a long time. I do think that it was quite clear with the conversations I had with him, the minister, that with the it makes things more complicated with the border, with the travel bans and bringing in people, and they're not sure if they're going to be able to hit the ground running with job offers. Some of them are getting assessed without, you know, having a job in hand. And so do they really want them coming in right now? But I think that as the pandemic comes under control, we're going to see them coming in. In terms of parental grandparent program, there's no indication on that whatsoever. There's been really no substantive conversations on that. They waited till the end of the year last year. They have said 30,000, but I don't think that there's no intel on that I can offer in terms of whether it's going to be next month or the month after. I don't necessarily think it'll be the beginning of this year. I think they waited as long as they did because I think the pandemic was raging. I mean, as the pandemic continues, I don't anticipate that they'll open it up, you know, soon. Neerja, do you want to take? You want to talk about AIPP?
Is AIPP a practical program for entry in Canada? Of course, it depends on if you meet the requirements. It is definitely a lot faster than some other provincial nomination programs in that area, but definitely depends on if you meet the requirements. We'll have to assess you for that, but definitely is a great program as long as you are able to meet the requirements and you show an intention to reside there.
Yeah, because I mean, you can have like a lower skill job there. You know, if you have a lower job, you can get permanent residence. So if you can get a job there, it can be something positive, and we do a high volume of those in our practice, as Neerja knows. So we're happy to help you with that. What is the best way to know what's outstanding, how long the file will take? I mean, each case is different. I recognize the name here. Each case is different in terms of spousals. You know, some cases are being processed ahead of others. It's not necessarily first in, first out. If it's been pending a while, you know, it's not, I wouldn't say that this is a definitive period of time. Like when I say 19 months or whatever, I mean, and again, I did say that in terms of the current processing times, but that's not factoring in the fact that, as I said, he's allocated more officers, both for inland and for outland. So I think with the new officers allocated, we're going to see processing times come down. This is just the current snapshot, but it doesn't mean that's what's going to be, as these officers get to work. And that's been an issue, to be honest with you. I mean, there hasn't been the same level of attention. And there have been stories in the media, you could Google yourself, where civil servants have not been working. They've been sitting at home, many of them getting paid and not working, which has been a little frustrating for a lot of the members of the Canadian Bar Association that I represent, because there's a lot of young women who have kids who struggling and juggling, and they pivoted, and we've had to pivot as a private firm. So it's been frustrating that the government was not able to do that as effectively. I mean, they make good money, they have good pensions, they can afford another screen or a laptop or whatever to get going, or it can be provided to them. So I've actually been asking some of those questions delicately, but making the point that there are a lot of our clients that have been waiting a long time, and it's been unnecessary in terms of the delays. Neerja, you want to take the IEC question?
Sure. Yes. So to add on to that one, of course, whatever processing times we did discuss, that of course is assuming that this is a straightforward application. Of course, if there are inadmissibilities or any other complications in your application, these processing times do not apply, and it's likely to take a little bit longer to deal with. So for the IEC, you do need a job offer. You need confirmation from the employer that when you enter Canada, you will be able to begin work right away.
Okay, so dual intent TRV for spouse outside of Canada. I mean, if you're a spouse of a permanent resident of Canada, I mean, then there's exemption in terms of the travel ban. There's still the issue of meeting the immigration requirements, which are always there. So I wouldn't say the pandemic is in your way on this. I'd say the issue is that depending on where you're coming from, there are some very high fraud countries and regions out there, and they don't want to issue visitor visas because they want to test the permanent resident application and genuineness on that first. So, so that's, especially if you need a visitor visa, then you could be coming from a country where there's some fraud potentially, and they may not want to issue it. So we sort of look at these cases on a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to say never, but oftentimes we, because we're not business people, unlike some of the people representing people out there, we're lawyers, and lawyers have to look at what's in the best interest of our client. So even when people want to hire us for things, every day we turn away business, if you want to put it that way, and we advise what's in their interest. And so it may not be in your interest to submit a visitor visa application and hire us to do that. That's where we have the consultations and we do a professional job, and we advise you what's in your interest. Quebec Investor Program. I mean, this is the last question. I think I guess I can take it because I've done a number of these, and it's one thing to get the approval through Quebec. It's quite another for the federal government to process, and I just think they're not in a hurry sometimes, and that's why I've been using the startup visa more and more, because their processing times are more reliable. There's not necessarily the need to reside in Quebec, which a lot of people can find beneficial. It's a federal program, and it's a less of a financial commitment, frankly. Most people will do the financing option with the Quebec Investor Program. That will lead to a much greater expense overall and a much larger commission to the agent or immigration representative. So again, we will steer people into what's in their best interest. In the startup visa, if it's less money for you, less commission for us, but less money for you, faster and more reliable, then I would, and not the issue of Quebec having to reside there, then I would sort of steer you that way. But now that you've already filed for the Quebec Investor Program, I think what you have to understand is the federal government doesn't like this program. it's beneficial to the province of Quebec because they get a lot of money from this program. They retain the funds, but there's major concerns with the program that people don't really intend on living in Quebec, and that's just a way to get in. The province keeps the money, and then they end up going to Vancouver. Some people argue that it drives up the housing market. I don't think that that's a significant source of that. I think there are other factors, like for instance, the lack of property and real estate that's available. But some people will pin it on newcomers, and I think that the federal government's sort of sensitive to that, and sensitive to the fact that they don't necessarily contribute to Canadian society as much. And so we as a firm have made many suggestions on how we can get high net worth folks into Canada, maybe contributing to an infrastructure fund, et cetera, in a way that benefits Canada. And we think we do, and we are competing with the rest of the world for high net worth people who are going to really, create employment and create businesses in Canada. So I think we need to have programs that are like the startup visa, but even more options. But for Quebec investor program, just understand that part of what's going on is the federal government's not in a hurry. So it could take, we've seen cases take 2-3 years after the Quebec government has issued their approval. And I guess that's it for today, but if you have any other questions, I think Stephen will give you our contact information. You can email us directly. We can set up consultations. We're happy to talk about your case.
Yeah, you are correct, Ravi. So thank you so much. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. And then obviously a special thanks to Ravi and Neerja for sharing their expert knowledge. If you would like to discuss topics from today's webinar in more detail, please reach out to book a consultation. Details can be found on screen now. I'll also be sending a copy of the webinar around a little bit later. I encourage you all to sign up to our e-alerts and follow us on social media to keep up to date on the latest developments inside Canadian immigration. And until next time, everybody, stay safe.
Thank you.